Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Ryan with Rigs of Death Metal. My guest today is Rigel Walshe of Diocletian. Rigel, how you doing, man?
Very good. Beautiful day here in Mexico City. So,
Nice.
yeah, very good.
So, do you have a? I know you guys are originally from New Zealand. Do you have a residence in Mexico City, or?
Yeah, I'm a resident in Mexico, Paraguay, and a couple of other places as well. And I live mainly in those two places. There's not really any pull to go back to New Zealand, and I've been out there for 5 years now. So yeah, this is mainly where I live here in Mexico City.
Okay, that's cool, man.
It
Uh,
is.
I know a lot of your presentations and like your uh, public speakings and all that you do for the for Bitcoin and all that. I know that probably has you flying all over the place, I'm sure.
Yeah, I only just started like doing conferences and talking just before COVID,
Okay.
and I left New Zealand just before COVID as well, like about 6 months before, and after COVID, and actually had events going again and stuff. I started really getting into it and speaking at 3 or 4 conferences a year, and man, like
Yeah.
I flew to a couple in New York and in Europe when I was in New Zealand, and man, it's like 48 hours flying,
Mm, gotcha.
including the stopovers and stuff. So here it's like, oh, it's only 9 hours from Mexico City to Prague or something. Like, wow, awesome.
That's cool.
So it is a
Yeah.
lot easier. And also, when it comes to touring, it makes total sense in that we were together as a unit in New Zealand for um, 3, 4 years. No, hold on, 3 years, 2 years, 2.5 years. So we got that initial gel and chemistry from that, but we don't. It's like a lot of bands nowadays, right? Don't rehearse in person, or rarely do, right? Perhaps before a show or something like that, but don't rehearse like I used to when I was a kid, like every weekend, right? And
Yeah.
it makes a hell. Apart from that, it makes a hell of more sense that I'm here because generally we're playing ever other than New Zealand, Australia,
Hmm.
and it's just a cheaper airfare and logistically easier to have at least one person out there. So
Nice.
yeah.
Makes sense. Uh, what are you sipping on this evening?
Well, I have. I'm not sure if you're a whiskey guy. This Lagavulin 16,
Oh, okay.
which to my mind is the king of whiskeys. Obviously, a very
Yeah.
controversial opinion-laden topic, right? But I think a lot of people would agree it's the king of whiskey. So
Yeah.
yes, that.
I've had it once. I do love whiskey, but since we had our kids, I don't drink very often.
Right, right,
Uh,
right.
just a thing for me. I
I
don't
get
like
it.
drinking around the kids. I'm always with them. So,
I get it. I get it. Yeah, I
but
mean, I was a very heavy drinker for a lot of my life, and nowadays I restricted to the weekends. But something like this, I like to have a good tipple on something nice like this. So
I do
yeah.
love a good whiskey. And I'm not usually much of a cocktail person, but like an old
I,
fashioned.
I'm all about that. Like all about cocktails. Really into that world of more like the bitter. Like
Yeah,
Negroni is my favorite drink, and I'm very much into that world myself. But
I
I
like
recommend that you should check it out.
for sure. I mean, I love a good like Russian mule or an old fashioned. Um, stuff like fairly simple,
Mm-hmm.
but that's I don't know, I'm a simple guy, I guess.
It's good. Yeah, I mean, like one of my favorites, which is a newer drink. There's this bartender called Sam Ross, who's kind of a famous guy. He's made a lot of like new classics.
Hmm.
One I really recommend called a penicillin, which is just basically lemon juice, blended scotch. What else is in there? Lemon juice, blended scotch, ginger liqueur, and you've got to like float like a single malt on the top, and it
Hmm.
tastes like the name penicillin, like some old school medicine, but it's fucking really good if you like whiskey for
Hell yeah.
the taste. Yeah.
Okay, I'll have to check that out. We holidays coming up, and it's
There
usually
you go.
break out a little bit of libations.
Worth the effort. Worth the effort.
Absolutely. Well, I guess we can just kind of dive right into the gear rundown. I know you
Sure.
play one of my favorite basses out there in the world, the Rickenbacker,
Hmm.
and you've got a
Hmm.
couple of them.
I've got three, which is, thank you for doing this earlier because I'm about to fly down to Paraguay and keep there more or less permanently. So I just got one in Chicago a couple of weeks ago.
Mhm.
So now I have three. One is these, you heard of like a chicken backer?
No, no.
Those Chinese copy,
Oh,
you know,
okay. Yeah.
there's a lot of these not Alibaba, but there's similar ones, right? We can go on there and buy these copy guitars.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, actually, Ryan from Blasphemy, his main guitar, that Ironbird that he's been playing,
Mhm.
is one of these Chinese ones. Um,
I had suspicions because there's things about it that looked off. I'm like,
yeah,
either
yeah,
somebody
but
built that for them or it's a copy.
and it's like some of them are like really shit, like they're absolutely fucked. But some of them are actually really, really good.
Hmm.
He actually, well, I heard about that through Brandon, told me that. And the one I've got here, I'll show you in just a second, is one of those. I actually found it on Facebook Marketplace here in Mexico City, where I wanted something where I don't, if I want to just bang around on something and not, pull out the wreck or whatever.
Yeah.
It's similar, but it's actually quite different. I don't know. So maybe do you want me to like turn the camera because I've got them sitting right over here, and
Cool.
I can show you the setup.
Sure.
Okay, all right. So there, I mean, you can see pretty
Oh,
clearly
nice.
there. So this one here is the main one that I have played for most of my career with Diocletian.
Hmm.
Originally, I had this. Actually, let me see if I can do the screen share thing to show you this. So if I go to here, and one second, man. Where's this? And select the right thing. Oh, fuck it. I'll just do this as a bit of a
There we go.
preview of what's to come. But no, it's not this one. I've got to go to the other one. Hold on, dude. Sorry. Technical difficulties. Here
All
we
good.
go. Right. So you can see, no, you're looking at the other one still, I think. Hold on. This one here. Right. That one there. You can see
Oh, there we
that.
go.
Yeah. So that was, I got this US Warlock in like 2006. I think I bought it on eBay.
Hmm.
Got it sent over there. So when I started with Diocletian, that was what I was using. So I joined like 2017. Um, but I only use this like we played in the Oakland Death Fest, and I just bought a guitar over there for that. But this one here, I used for a couple of shows we did tour with Ishan and Belfagor in Australia. I used
Hmm.
it there. We did two local shows, so one in Wellington and one in Auckland from memory. I think that was all that we did before I left there. And this is what I used for those. And that was my main one at the time. It's a nice guitar. I used a lot in Dawn of Azal before. This is kind of my main thing. It's, very nice US um, guitar. But then I went to New York for a conference in 2018 and I had around $20,000 New Zealand in cash that I got via a something. And I had all this cash and I'm trying to get rid of it, right? And so I thought, well, here's a great opportunity. So I flew over there hoping to find a Rick, and I brought a ton of cash and just went and changed it at a cash changer there and bought this there in 2018. So this is like a 4003, I think. Man, I really can't remember. Um, I don't. I thought I had it written down somewhere, and I tried to look, but I couldn't find it. But I believe from memory, this is 1994, and I think in 95, they changed these to Shaler's. This does have a Shaler lock on it, but it's because I swapped it. And
Okay.
because I swapped it, I'm sure it's pre 95 at least. But yeah, I seem to remember 94. So yeah, this is, just your standard 4003, very nice thing to play. And this has been, what I recorded amongst Flames of Burning God with. We did the European tour in 2018. I used this, the one we did in 2024 last year with this.
Hmm.
We played Tijuana, same thing as well. So yeah, that's been kind of my main workhorse and nice, little old, little aged. You can see, I'm not sure you can see in the light here, but there's like some like star things here. I think this has probably been repainted or someone had some weird thing going on with this before. But nice bass. And it was the first time because in New Zealand they're very rare to find, very hard to find. And so, I wanted to get it. I just took a punt on getting it right. and yeah, really love the sound. It's got that nice, the famous kind of growl and everything.
Oh
And of
yeah.
course, big Motorhead fan. So, there's that element too. So yeah, that's been my thing up until recently. I played the last show with it, which I probably will play unless I end up flying from Paraguay to somewhere for a tour in the future. Was Mexico City a couple of weeks ago when we played there. And so this is what I just bought in Chicago, which is a 4003W. So it's walnuts, body, maple neck, and walnut and maple body because it's the neck through design. Maple fretboard. Apart from that standard Rick, you can see here it's got this different. I'm actually not clued up on when or how they changed the bridges, but you can see like a different
Oh yeah.
bridge on those two. Um, and I think I like the new one better as far as the bridge goes, and definitely to play and for the sound wise, I actually did. This reminded me I was supposed to do a comparison, so I recorded all three playing the same sort of thing. And yeah, this has it sounds a little fuller. I think I need to adjust the pickups on this because they've slipped a little,
Oh
and
yeah.
because as last time I really used this was in Europe last year. I haven't really got around to kind of fixing up of 5 weeks of on the road and getting banged around. So
Mm.
so maybe a little bit because of that, but yeah, the neck on this as well. I don't think you can really see this on video, but you can certainly see it when you touch it. It's like the neck on this is quite a bit thicker. Yeah, I mean, I guess you probably can't really see it very well on the video,
Oh yeah.
but it's kind of wider, and so it's a different feel to play. But this is a lot lighter. I haven't weighed this. Apparently, this is 4 kilos, but you can definitely feel the lightness in it. And
Mm.
so, for all those reasons, yeah, I mean, I just like this to play a lot more, and also because it's a little bit older and a bit more classic. It's more the sort of thing you want to keep sitting in your studio, your office, right, rather than taking it out on the road. So
For sure.
from here on in, this should be my main baby. I think this one there. And this is the chickenbacker. So made in China. I just bought us some guy off Facebook Marketplace, so I know very little about where it's from or what the pieces are. You
Oh
can
wow.
see compared to this,
Yeah, like
very
when
different
you
bridge, right?
the
And the
bridge, the
pickups
pickups are a little off.
obviously not
Yeah,
the same. They're kind of modeled on it. Um,
even the
and the
body
neck is,
templates. Yeah.
yeah, the body, it's weird. It's kind of a mix of the two of these. Like it's
Hmm.
not, when I first got it, I thought, oh, yeah, this is really different. But the new one has if you can see there, it's like the head stock is a little bigger and a slightly different shape.
Yeah.
And this one is kind of a bit more like that style than this one. So it's a weird beast. But yeah, I mean, definitely not the same thing. Definitely doesn't sound like the other ones.
Mm.
The interesting thing about this is I just to do this test, I went and bought the same set of strings and strung them all up. And this one here, the bridge is so small and thin, I couldn't actually get the E string, which is 120 gauge, to
Hmm.
fit through the thing here. So I had to use like the lower string. So definitely, this doesn't sound anything like the others for the
Hmm.
pickups, for the strings, or anything like that. But it's a cool little thing to bang around on
Sure.
and have sitting around. But it's got the fake made in USA on there and everything. So it could pass maybe an initial sniff test, but if you really touch it, you can definitely tell it's not the same thing.
Yeah.
And this is the guitar I use for writing riffs. This new album that we're doing right now, we've actually got 6 songs done already.
Hell yeah.
Is the first one where I'm actually writing. The first album that I was on, Amongst Plains of Burning God, when I joined, it was already written. The
Hmm.
last one, I was over here. I didn't have a guitar. I didn't have anything at all because of what happened more or less with my life during COVID and coming over here. So I don't really get to contribute other than lyrics and the vocals to the last one. But this one here, and we'll see where we go with what actually comes out. But at this stage, I think I've written probably about 70% of the material. So quite a lot of stuff and new stuff is mine. And this is kind of what I use here. It's one of these. I don't even know what particular model of Richards is. It's like they call it like antique violin, and I found it online sometimes, and it looks like one of these masterpiece ones, but it's not
Yeah.
quite the same. The masterpiece ones have like masterpiece here, and this just says you can't really see it, but it just says
Hmm.
Mockingbird. But it's a real nice finish. I love these arch tops. I love this color. I was actually really looking for this exact mock, but the black matte with the gold binding version
Yeah.
that they
Yeah.
have. And I almost found one here, but then someone bought it. But then I saw this, so I just jumped on it. So that's kind of what I used to write guitar with is that. So apart from that, we have this is my main effects that I use. And I'll go into some detail a little bit later about why this is when I talk about everyone else's stuff as well. But these are these like, do you know this company Demon Effects? Have you heard of
Oh
this?
yeah, yeah,
This is like Chinese copies of Dark Glass.
yeah.
Um, and so, over here, like I said, I only went back to New Zealand for the first time in 5 years in February this year. So all my gear is there. I don't have anything here at all. So I was looking, okay, and when we did the Tijuana show and then Prague Death Mass and all these others, gonna need to get some effects. What I'm going to get, and here you do have eBay here in Mexico, and you can get a lot of stuff, but it's quite expensive. A lot of the gear. And so I saw these. I was looking for dark glass because I actually had that B7K previously,
Hmm.
and it's not the first thing that would come to mind with Diocletian, but I do know like dark glass makes a lot of very base specific effects. So I was looking for some dark glass stuff, and I came across these, and like I'm sure in US, I think these are about like 300 something bucks, right? 250, something like that. I
Something
think
like
they go
that.
for, and these are like 1,600 pesos, so 80 bucks US. And
Oh wow.
I haven't had the chance to A/B test. I have played this pedal, like the US version, but I haven't had the chance to like A/B them next to each other. But I've watched a
Mhm.
lot of videos and read a lot of reviews, and a lot of people say it's exactly the same thing. And I think that's what it is they've just ripped open the circuit board, cloned the board, and made these more or less. So yeah, these are the two I use. Just this Alpha Omega um, pedal, which is they got several versions of this. Right, this is a bigger one or whatever, but this is the one that I could find here, which does the job. It's just got heaps of gain, and that real distorted kind of sounds. And this harmonic booster, which is like an EQ pedal, but one of these ones where it's a lot more kind of closed as far as what you can actually do with it. Right, it's just got a couple of dials rather than the frequency band thing. Right, so this just makes it a lot more fuller bodied and sound a lot more
Yeah.
presence. And so I put this first and then feed this into the distortion, and that's it, man. Just run those two.
You just run that to
For
the front of like whatever.
to the amp, yeah.
Okay.
And here I don't have an amp here because I'll park that about why because there's a bit of a story behind all this about
Sure.
that and everyone else's decision. So let me come back to about why I don't have an amp here, but
Sure.
I run that into my amp that I'm using for like wireless. Initially, I bought these Boss things before the European tour last year. These Boss, what are they called? I can't even remember. It's seven WLT2, WL20. Beg your pardon, these. And I use these, and these were good, but they're a little. I mean, I don't like this as a USB A input here, which I like USB C, right? And USB A
Oh yeah.
is kind of a quite an indicated format now.
Yeah.
So I was using these, and these work good, but I did have a problem where I left one of these on stage. I don't know how or where, but in Italy, I left one of these, and trying to get another one of these on the road was a nightmare, and they're not the cheapest either. So I actually saw a band here in Mexico playing with these Chinese cheap ones you can get, and these are
Hmm.
like again like 40 bucks or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And so, I was always like, no, man, like, don't skimp on that stuff. Get the good stuff. Get Boss or something, right? But I saw them using them, and I thought, wow, 40 bucks, I'm going to try it. And I've used these quite a lot now, and they work really well, and it's a lot cheaper. They've got USB C, and so I could, for the price of these, I could have like four of these sitting around. If one fucks out, I can swap
Sure.
them out or whatever. I think next time I go on the road, I'll probably bring both. But these are like the wireless that I use. And I think if you just search on their brand, there's probably like five clones of this because this Chinese shit is.
Yeah.
But yeah, this looks really good for me. So I like to keep it simple. So there's that, and this is the strap that I use, and I use Shayla strap locks.
Oh yeah.
Fortunately, not in Chicago, which almost uh, several times caused issues, but I just didn't have the time to be able to get some Shaylas. I literally landed, woke up the next day, ate breakfast, got the space, went straight to rehearsal, from rehearsal straight to the venue, and had like about 2 hours to get shit together. So I didn't have the time to really play around with things. So, but now I do have shallows on there.
Oh,
So yeah, that's the guitars that I have. Also the basses that I have. But I can now go through the other guy's stuff.
yeah.
If
Sure.
you just let me pull this up, and I got some notes from the guys as well. So I'll just pull up these pictures and then I'll pull those out and then try and narrate or something.
Okay.
So the guitars that the other guys use is where are we? This here. These here. Now, these are customs made by a friend of ours in New Zealand, a guy's named Sam,
Hmm.
and he's made guitars for us, for Heresiarch, a couple of other people, I think, as well. Um, but yeah, these are. Let me just get what Brandon told him here. So they're neck through with mahogany wings. They've got Brazilian rosewood fretboards.
Hmm.
His one's fan threaded. I think you can see here. Um, Marcus's bitch here is not. He's got an EMG. No, hold on. No, Marcus has bare knuckle. What are they called? He has no, a big bun of lace
Okay.
pickups. What are they called? I didn't tell me what brand they were, but lace passives. Um,
Gotcha.
and Brandon has, I thought he had an EMG. We said he has an EMG, but it doesn't look like he does here. I think originally he had lace as well, so maybe he swapped them out.
Mhm.
But yeah, so that's the front view, and I can just pull out here.
Which the
Uh,
BC Ridge bitch is one of my all-time favorite guitar shapes. I absolutely love that
I
copy.
like Bees are just like he's improved. You know, I've seen a lot of copies, but I like the way he's done these. Man, they're very
Yeah,
nice, right? Very tasteful kind of variations on that thing. Here's the back view of those two guitars as well.
that's
So yeah,
awesome.
they use those two, and they run through. They used to use those. What are they called? Used to use those more. What's happened to my thing here? Used to use those more GE 200s, which are those amp modeler
Oh yeah, yeah.
picks. But we had some problems with those, and I've definitely had this experience using gear of a similar nature in Dawn of Azel with things. It's like if you have these really special effects units, and in particular they have like specialized AC adapters.
Hmm.
Something breaks on the road, it's just, yeah, man, it's a fucking nightmare, right? You're done. You know,
Yeah,
the chance of you getting that specific piece of gear in the thing, where if you're lucky, maybe one time out of a week, you get a chance to get to a guitar store, and they're probably not going to have this specific piece of gear. It doesn't work. So I mean, they switched over to now. They both use where are we? They both use these Line Six HX stomps, which are kind of these pedally amp
yeah.
modelry kind of things, but the same kind of stuff.
I
And
used to
so
have one of those. They're great.
yeah, I mean, to come back to all of this about why I have a simple setup, why they use that, and all this is in my old band on of Ezel, for example, I'm king of like long stories, so bear with me, but it will shine some light on why this is. We were the first band in New Zealand's um, certainly metal band, and like one of the first real even kind of rock bands to do. I think to this day we're still doing the longest tour in Europe, for example. But like when we started doing international tours, we didn't have anyone to ask or to know how you do this kind of stuff, right? And also in those days, gear was very expensive, and specific stuff was hard to come by, right? So it was a lot of it was about, and also in New Zealand, you've got to fly everywhere, right? Even if you're doing a show in Wellington, you're in Auckland, you can drive that. It's like 10 hours drive, but the flight is like less than an hour, and tickets are like, would be like $70 US per person. So generally you fly everywhere, and certainly anywhere outside New Zealand, you're flying. And the weight limit, you guys in the States have generally, I think it's, what's it, 30 kilos, I think it is, or in pounds, whatever that is. 50 pounds, I think is the limit, right? And we got 20 kilos, which is, what's that, less than that,
Yeah, yeah.
in is a thing, right? And, obviously, internet, when you're flying big international flights, like excess baggage can really start to add up. So the whole thing for us, and I think most bands in New Zealand has always been, you've got to keep it simple and light and reproducible, because
Mm.
when you got to fly everywhere, you can't lug this, these big, like, and I've seen these guys, you have these big Pelican cases with, some massive rack set up or something. It's just not
Yeah.
feasible. So you've got to have something that's simple and basic and generic if possible as well. And so really that's the philosophy behind a lot of the stuff, is to get a sound which is does the job, but also if you're trying to get really into some exotic ant modeling stuff and a million effects and rack units and stuff like that, it's just a recipe for disaster, because something is going to break, or something is going to go wrong, or something is going to get lost. And if you're really relying on that for your tone, you're just going to be playing the rest of the tour with this feeling. Maybe the audience doesn't see it as much as you, but you've got this thing like, oh, you just know it could sound so much better, and it doesn't, and there's no way to fix it, right? So yeah, a lot of the philosophy behind what we do and our whole setup is to try and keep it as basic and simple as possible. Like that's why I don't have an amp. For example, here is I could buy some nice Ampeg. I'm a fan of Ampegs
Hmm.
generally, like classic or SBT4 Pro is my preference. But what am I going to do with that amp, man? Like, it's, I guess we'll probably play in Mexico again at some point. But beyond that, I'm going to put it on a plane and, just fuck bringing an amp, on a plane. So if I was going to buy one, I did bring back from New Zealand when I went back there, like I've got an SBT7, which is
Hmm.
relatively light, it's kind of portable, but still 10-ish kilos, I
Yeah.
think. But I've already got my eye on one of these like Diocletian or similar 500-watt heads, the really small light ones, and
Oh,
that's
they're
something that at
great.
least you can take with you, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's more or less the rundown as far as the gear goes. I'm not sure if I've got anything there, or there's anything that you want to ask about that, but that's more or less the long and the short of it.
Yeah. No, I mean that covered a pretty wide breadth of it.
I was
Is
supposed to
your
hold on. Actually, there's one thing I was supposed to show, which I forgot, which we were
Oh
talking
yeah.
about before, is so they're the main guitars that those guys used, but also there's this super cool one which we did use in Tijuana.
Oh,
And
I don't know which one.
is a very cool guitar made by the same guy, Sam. So this one here is made out of aluminium. It's fucking crazy, dude. It is an insane guitar. Fan frets. You can see these like kind of like hook things here on it. Can this thing scroll up now? Here we go. So yeah, man, this thing is a beast, bro. It's crazy, and unfortunately, Brendan sent me more photos. I was asking for more, but like you can see here, it's like two things of aluminium kind of welded with
Hmm.
a cavity in the middle that's not even sealed, so you can see all the electronics out of there. But it's also like, man, if anyone wants to fuck you, this thing's like literally an axe or something, dude.
Oh
It's
yeah.
it's a crazy fucking guitar, man. This thing. So yeah, this does get
Yeah.
used a bit, but
A Is that a
not the
beheaded
most practical
skateboard?
guitar. And it's quite light though. So I mean, his one, I think Brandon said his guitar is 6 kilos. So quite a heavy
Yeah.
piece of equipment, right? Was this is quite a bit lighter,
Hmm.
but yeah, Brandon's got a ton more US BC Riches. Did use in a Zyphos when we did the 2018 European tour.
Hmm.
I think he's got a car that he just bought like some shitty Jackson when we're over for Metal Threat, as we always bought guitars over there. I'm not sure. I saw him playing some riffs with that. I was thinking, man, you're holding on to this. It was like $200 or something like that. So maybe that will make an appearance again. But no, I think it's going to be those like custom rich clones that are like super nice guitars, super
Yeah.
cool, look amazing, play amazing, sound amazing. So yeah.
I was gonna ask at because I was watching videos of your all's Metal Threat
Mm-hmm.
appearance, and yeah, I noticed the Ibanez RG, and was it a Jackson? What was it?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, King VU, not a King V, the Randy Rhodes V, right? That one.
Is that what it? Yeah. Um, but yeah, I noticed that. I was like, oh, I bet it must be like. I was like, I know that they weren't the customs I was used to seeing. Is like maybe they just take those for like flying out or something, just to.
Yeah, I mean, something like that, particularly in the States, is just easier to buy something there. And certainly for me, like I'd been wanting to get another Rick for quite some time, and it's
Mhm.
probably cheapest than anywhere else. And you're going to get a better selection in the US than anything else. So I was like, oh man, I'm just going to buy something over there.
Makes
So
sense.
that's why. Yeah, one of those was like Dan from who sound engineer who recorded part of the last album and plays with Finn that we toured with in 2018. It was his guitar, that RG. So Marcus just borrowed it off him for that show.
Gotcha. Hell yeah. Which I mean, from the videos, it's like sounded great. Um,
Thanks, man.
Still kicking myself for not going. We wanted to go so bad, but it just wound up being like a last minute, like kind of money thing. So it's
Mm.
because I live in West Virginia, so that's a pretty good haul.
Yeah, yeah.
Plus I got two boys, so it's like a whole scheduling thing. How
Yeah,
it is.
not the easiest. I mean, and I can get it, with the bands that dropped off. There was certainly some bands that I was like hanging to see it. dropped off, and I was bummed about it. So I can understand why some people might have been like, that was some band that was the whole reason for them going wasn't there. And so, but it was still a very successful show with a number of people that did come along. And for us, like, yeah, that show was awesome. Really, really good. Really enjoyed it. Obviously, you had plenty of little things where I went to the video, I'm like, oh, fuck this up, or that could have been better, or whatever. But in general, really, really good. The crowd's awesome. The US is always really, really good for us. And it's such a pain that, the last time we played, it was 2017, I think, dude, with at the Oakland Death Fest. And
Hmm.
we've been almost coming back like two or three times. Like one of them was 2020, and like, obviously, COVID happened, and so got canned. And then there was some other tour, which I can't remember what it was, but there was something else we were talking about that didn't come through. So, and the US is getting harder and harder. Everywhere is getting harder and harder to tour, right? And as far as getting something where you actually can cover your costs, and especially when you got to pay for these guys from the
Mhm.
crazy ass end of the world to fly there. It's not easy, right? But I would certainly hope that we'll be back a lot sooner than, what's that, 17 to fucking 7 years, or what is 8 years, or whatever it is. Certainly hope we'll be back sooner than that, because yeah, I mean, US is always really good for us. Seems to be a very good support base there. Love to play the place. So yeah, hopefully it will be a lot less long time between that one and the next one.
Hell yeah. Because I've been a fan since I think when did Cassandrian first come out? Was it 14 or 15?
14, I think. Yeah, 14.
I remember that album coming out and it kind of getting like some pretty good press. And I was like, oh, that looks pretty cool. And
Yeah,
been
great, great disc. Just unfortunately, the whole kind of lineup fell apart not long
well,
after.
right,
That things are kind of, the momentum got a little lost.
sure. But honestly, your guys' releases since then have been just as killer. I heard in one of your previous interviews, there was a conscious choice where uh, Sundrian had like a bit more. It's funny to say more a polished kind of sound because it's still a very abrasive, very raw, aggressive
Yeah.
sounding record. But comparing it to some of the other releases, I can hear the conscious choice to, let's go more primitive, go more raw. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I mean, as I said, I haven't like contributed that much musically, certainly lyrically and vocals and everything else. But the
sure.
other two, it's pretty much been written for me, right? And I can do my little bit in the bass, but as far as the actual songs go, it's all been Brandon. But yeah, I mean, he's very big on, and yeah, I completely agree with the sentiment of trying not to. I mean, for one thing, like war metal, right? And I guess we are war metal if we don't consider ourselves to be, but I think for most people, they will put us in that box, right?
Yeah.
It's very easy it's a very limited palette to paint with, right? And a lot of
Mhm.
these younger bands of that style, they'll come up with one really good release, and then it's just the next one will sound exactly like, because there's just not a lot to paint with, right?
Sure.
So for us, we're quite conscious about trying to do something a little different, and I think more like an inexorable nexus than amongst the flames of burning gods. There definitely was that in there, but the new one, yeah, it's very different too. I mean, I guess if it's like anything, I guess so far, and again, like I said, we've got 6 songs. Probably what I think is going to be somewhere between 60 and 50% of the final album.
Hmm.
um, yeah, I mean, if it's like anything, I would guess say like Cassandrian, but not really. But it's a bit more that kind of like style of that. To me was a bit more like Angel Corpse, but a much nastier, evil Angel Corpse or something, right? That album.
Gotcha.
It's a bit more like that, but again, different. And we're very big on like we don't want to get pigeonholed into like, yeah, I don't want to bang Revenge, but I feel like Revenge is an example of this, right? Of like, you're very respected, kind of like one of the leaders of the genre, but kind of putting out the same album over and over again, right? We don't want to fall
Sure.
into that thing. You've got to consciously take a risk and do different stuff to avoid getting trapped in that space. And so that's something we consciously try to do. So,
They're kind of harkening back to Cassandrian. I don't know if it's just a psychological thing because of like how epic the cover is, as well as like the intro to the record.
mm-hmm.
It always evoked just this slight kind of Bathory, like epic kind of influence to
Mm-hmm.
some level somewhere in the soup there. Um, whereas maybe the record since then is just more, you know, ca- primitive caveman kind of, you know, for the
Hmm.
new stuff, could do you, well, first off, do you hear that at all, or is that just completely my thing? Or, do
Yeah,
you,
I mean, I guess it's more like doom cult or something
yeah.
than other styles of Diocletian. Maybe a little of like all against all, but like more of that than I think anything else.
Hmm.
But I think that was talking to Brandon. That was definitely the conscious choice post Cassandrian is not trying to. Very easy to get into that trap of you
Yeah.
get this kind of breakthrough album that people love, and so obviously they expect you to deliver the same thing, which it's a smart business decision
Hmm.
and for the fan smart thing. But I mean, ultimately, you're making this for yourself, and if you don't want to get pigeonholed, not that I think that would necessarily be a horrible thing to be pigeonholed as, but also like you paint yourself on a corner, right? When you start doing the same thing over and over again, and again, not to say that we are the masters of this or we're better than anyone else, but there's very few bands in our subgenre that do quite different releases, and I think
Yeah.
those two are quite different from each other and from Doom Cult, right? They are the similar style, but they're not the same thing, right? And so that's something I think you got to really, particularly with this style, you really got to fight to do it because otherwise you're just going to end up doing the same release over and over again, and people are not interested, right? Yeah, and for you, it becomes, like you're trapped, and
Sure.
making music becomes less interesting. So it's a choice you got to make, and that's the choice that we made. So
Absolutely. It's just kind of the struggle that I would imagine most professional musicians would have to deal with is, finding the line between supporting and running it as a business versus actual artistic fulfillment. And it just has to be a choice that they all have to make, you know?
yeah, I
Um,
mean, I think no matter what type of music you play, right? There's it's the same. There are people in the genre who are leaders and who are followers, right?
mhm.
And we would like to consider ourselves to be leaders, and that's the way that we want to think about this and do it. And doing that necessitates taking a kind of risk, right? And sometimes it's not going to work, and sometimes people are going to think your disc sucks or whatever. But you've only got two choices, man. Either you let people dictate and lead you and paint you in this box, or you decide to say, we're going to do what we're going to do, and we're going to lead, and hopefully it works out for us. All we can do is create the music that we think is great, and hopefully people think it's great too. But it's a binary choice, right? And to us, the second option, like I said there, of doing things your way is the only choice. So yeah.
Absolutely. Um, as far as your album tone for the bass parts and stuff like that, I was just kind of curious. What did you track with? I know you mentioned being a fan of Ampeg.
Hmm. So on Burning God, it was SVT7 that I had there. I used the Rickenbacker. I actually used, and man, I was trying to find this, but I'm not sure where the hell I put it. There's like this and I can't remember the name of the company either, but there's like a custom pedal company in New Zealand, and they actually made like a Diocletian pedal.
Oh, that's
Like I
cool.
think it was like two copies or something like that for us, right? But it's got like the wolf logo and everything on
Mhm.
it. It's like super cool. But it's more or less a muff clone, that one. And so I use that.
Okay.
Just rick into that, run to the amp. On the last one, I didn't record anything because I was, like I said, basically. So again, tangent time. COVID happened. I was living in Bali, Indonesia at the time, and then I got stranded in Australia. I'm not sure if you know, like my parents were freaking out, and at that time, like many of us, we kind of thought, are we all going to die or whatever? So I had to make a choice because all the borders were closing. What am I going to do? Am I going to stay here and potentially watch my parents die on video camera, or am I going to go there and try and support them? Right. So I made the choice to go to Australia, and then they closed the borders. And for Australians, at least, it was illegal to leave the country. It was crazy. Um, but New Zealanders were not in that box. But we have a immigration agreement that's kind of like the EU, where you can, as a New Zealander, you can move to Australia, live there without a visa, without just like walk straight to a job, live there forever without having to get a papers or anything like that, right? So I'm kind of thinking, well, I'd spent a couple of weeks there visiting my parents, and I'm thinking at this point, coming up to like May, when countries were finally starting to open for tourism in 2020, am I going to be considered to be an Australian resident with the amount of time I spend there? And does that mean I'm going to get trapped here? So
Mm.
as soon as I could, got the fuck out of there and went to Greece. This first place that opened for tourism. And originally was going to go back to, there was a rumor Indonesia was going to reopen for tourism in September. That didn't happen. My plan B was Mexico. And so I got a plane as soon as that the 1st of September didn't happen. I just bought a plane ticket to Mexico. And, here I am 5 years later. But when I left, I had, because when I moved to Bali, my parents lived in Perth, which is like an hour flight away. So I
Mhm.
just stashed a bunch of stuff at their place, like my guitar and my gear. But when I had to leave for Greece, in the middle of the COVID stuff, and this was June 2020,
Mhm.
you weren't sure about what was going to happen, was this going to last, what's going to go on from here. So I didn't bring a guitar or anything. It's like a crazy thing to carry when you're going to have to potentially be flying around the world and whatever. And it doesn't look like there's going to be concerts anytime soon. So yeah, I mean, I left all my musical gear in my parents' place, and so when they got around to recording, I didn't have any stuff to record on. So I
Yeah.
think Brandon tracked the bass with my Warlock that I showed you before.
Okay.
So I actually don't know what he used for the amp there, but I believe it may have been that same SPT7 for
Okay.
that there.
Gotcha. Um, for a lot of war metal recordings, bass can sometimes be lacking on part of that's the fidelity, part of it's just like a choice. Um Diocletian, for being a wall of sound, usually has a great like I love your all's mixes. It doesn't sound as lo-fi fidelity wise as like the classics, like Fallen Angel of
Mm-hmm.
Doom and stuff. Um, but it maintains the same integrity, the same intention, and the sound, which to me is such an awesome but kind of difficult balance, capturing like the raw essence, like what you want out of the band. You're not no polish, no sheen, nothing like that, but it just comes across the way it's supposed to, as if you saw the band live, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Thank you.
love the classic stuff, but it doesn't sound like if you go see Blasphemy live, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So finding like that balance, I think, is what's really important for recording that kind of music. And I think you guys, Antichrist Siege Machine, and maybe like Goat Smegma, like some of the newer guys
Mm-hmm.
that are really really good at straddling that line.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is a hard thing to do, right? And I think, as I said before, a lot of it's also this kind of vision, right? Where I think a lot of it's a very constrained genre, right, and very limited in its palette. And so to be able to have something unique or something different, right, I think is quite rare. I mean, I think Antichrist Siege Machine isn't a bad example of a band which I think has like a kind of unique identity, right, about what they do, right? It's still
Yeah,
very much in that box, but they're doing something that's kind of different and stands out. Whereas most of the bands that play the style are just complete copies, right? And so it is a hard thing to do where um, you've got to kind of be courageous, right? In that sense, if you wanted to break the mold, and if you don't break the mold, you're gonna get lost in the wash, right? Um, but I think a little easier for us in that we have the name and the recognition and people know who we are, and a little bit harder for guys like those guys, right? That are not so much nowadays, but certainly when they were coming up or putting out their first releases, right? To push things a little bit more in that direction.
mm-hmm.
It's quite easy to get to go too far in one direction, right? To make it, as you're saying, like cohesive, to make it work and make it sound like it fits, but not to be this like just to make it as ugly and messy and all mixed together as possible is a hard thing to do, right? So I mean, I can see why
Yeah,
a lot of people, you gotta have some vision and you gotta have some real thinking behind it to be able to do it. As crazy as it sounds for like how ugly the music is, but yeah, I definitely think it's a hard thing to do. But it's, as I said before, coming back to this whole thing of like having a vision, identity, doing things your way. It's something that you must do. Otherwise, you're just not gonna, you're not gonna last more than one disc if you're lucky. So
yeah. Um, something I was really curious to talk to you about. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I watched a
Just going to
couple
make a
of.
drink while you please continue.
Yes, please do. Have one for me. Um, I watched a couple of your previous interviews, and even watched a little bit of one of your conference appearances. Just
Oh yeah, oh cool.
yeah, well, we'll get into some Bitcoin stuff here in a little bit. Um,
Certainly.
but yeah, there was something you mentioned in one of your interviews. Maybe it was with Rata, or however you say his name.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Something like that.
yeah, yeah. Something I'm going to paraphrase because my memory sucks, but something along the lines of, you know, people should push themselves to be harder, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like, um, and you tied it into your years of service as a police officer in New Zealand, um, and comparing it also with people enlisting in the military, as opposed to just kind of living a relatively soft life. They don't really
Mm-hmm.
uh it res that all this kind of resonated with me because I've said something similar, and I've heard it from others. There's something almost unsettling about people that have like a scar-free life. They never, no taking chances, never do anything bad, never do anything to push themselves or put themselves in harm's way. Is It makes it hard, at least for me, to kind of relate to that sort of stuff. Not that I live in a decent area. West Virginia is not that crazy. Um, but doing things like being a rowdy teenager, getting into mischief and whatnot, and fights and this and that. And as I get older, you know, weightlifting is a recurring theme on this show. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but
Important as it should be.
absolutely. Um, yeah, no, it all these things, all those ideas, just it resonated with me in all those ways. Uh,
That's very cool.
that
Yes.
yeah. Um, I was wondering if maybe you could elaborate or maybe even share some stories, maybe to inspire some guys that maybe they went from school to a desk job and never really got into a fight before. They don't work out. They've they've just kind of been content and don't realize maybe what they're missing out on.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, kind of what drove all this was, if I try and trace it back, I think it was when I got into um, war metal, or I mean, Blasphemy was the first band that I heard. There used to be like a radio show in New Zealand called Nocturnal Dominion.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was 17, 18, I got to know these guys, and it was like Friday nights, midnight till 2, I think, or 11 till 1, something like that. I used to go up there, and they were 25 or something, and I was 17, and go up there and drink some alcohol and get wasted, and just hang on there every word and listen to because they got sent a lot of promo material from all the labels at the time. And yeah, one night they put on Fallen Angel of Doom, and I was just like literally like dropping, what the fuck is this, man? This is awesome. This is insane. It's such an evil sound, man. Like such an incredible production.
Yeah.
So that really was a pivotal release for me, and so I immediately, made them lend me the cassette tape of Fallen Angel of Doom, and at that time there was a magazine called Heresy magazine out of Australia. This guy Jason from Atomizer wrote, and that was something where in New Zealand at that time it's quite hard to find a lot of releases. You had like Napster and stuff in those days, but it was still very like an interesting one for me is like the Sarcophago release that was really influential to me that I got into Sarcophago following this story I'm about to relate. I could never get INRI. It was just like an impossible album to find there, and I couldn't
Mm.
download it.
Yeah.
In those days with things like SoulSeek or Napster, you could find some stuff, but more obscure stuff like that just wasn't. You couldn't get it.
Yeah.
So, and I tried to order it from some mail order places and just never showed up, or it was out of stock or something like that. So, Rotting was actually the Sarcophago album that I always got into, and I love. And to me, like INRI is actually not as good as writing, funnily enough.
Yeah.
But it was hard to get a lot of stuff. But this magazine was something, because it's from Australia, that was quite common. And in this issue of Heresy magazine, there was an interview with Keith Warslet. That was just when like Unchain the Wolves had just come out, and also with Pete Helmkamp about Order from Chaos, and I think it must have obviously been Angel Corpse, given the time. But so I got into those guys were both talking about that, and also was into Bestial Wallist, even before Blasphemy, maybe, but of the same kind of ilk, right? So that whole movement to me um, came together at that same time, but also like Pete's stuff was a big influence on me because I was into like quite intellectual stuff and a deeper level of this kind of things, and like he was probably the first guy, I think maybe it's going back a while, who I came across Nietzsche through Pete Helmkamp. I think I'm pretty sure. Like I read like Das Big Zarathustra when I was 17, so I think it must have been that. I think I'm not sure else. Maybe I read about it in some other metal guy or something like talking about, but I'm pretty sure it was from him. Um, and so yeah, that was a very influential book for me in terms of what you talked about, but also gelled. So for me, that those things are one and the same. They came from the same roots. They're and interchangeably connected and yeah, connected.
Yeah.
So to me, the writings of Nietzsche in particular were something which was very influential for me, and that like that and some other
Which Nietzsche was it again? I'm sorry.
Thus Spake Zarathustra was
Okay.
the Zarathustra, or how people say it differently, but that was and then I read like Trial of the Idols and the Antichrist and many other books of his, but like that was the one that
Yeah.
to this day as well to me is like one of the best books, if
I
not the
have
best book that's been written.
I have Good and Evil, but I need more.
Mhm. That
Um,
one to me, that one's the best, and then it's like a fiction story, and it's not like Beyond Good and Evil, the Antichrist or something. It's a bit more like these idioms, right, where it's kind of
mhm.
directly talking to philosophy.
Yeah.
And then it's more like a story where it's like a parable, right? Like
Hmm.
I don't know if you have ever gone into like Ayn Rand's, but like Atlas Shrugged to me is another book like that where it's like not
Oh, okay.
trying. You dig it or
What is it?
Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand.
I'm very aware of it, and I've heard it referenced a million times. I've not got to read it yet.
It's a very love hate book, and it
Yeah.
is like very self indulgently long, but a book I enjoy at least. But that's a book where Ayn Rand's like this kind of libertarian objectivism is what they call their philosophy, but it's very much about like the individual, right? And that book, like Zarathustra, it's a story rather than a philosophical treatise, but you like in a mythological tale, you read the teachings through the story, right? Rather than someone saying you should
Sure.
do this for this reason or something like that, right? So Zarathustra, yeah, to me is the best book of that, and it's a book, like the subtitle of the book. It's a book for anyone and for no one. It is like to me the classic elitist philosophy and something which that just something when I read it, it just clicked like nothing had ever clicked in my life. It was
Hmm.
something in my DNA or how I was raised or whatever. Just to this day, it's a book that I still really think resonates. And the whole point of that book, there's many themes and many things that it goes through, but like basically, I think Nietzsche, not that it's necessarily a book only for dudes or whatever, but it's a very masculine kind of take on philosophy, right? It's this kind of more like traditionally male way of seeing the world.
Yeah.
And basically, there's many idioms, like that which does not kill me makes me stronger or whatever. Um, to me, the coolest one is man, I cannot recall for the life of me the chapter in the book, but there's a thing where it starts in this chapter is like why so hard? Said the charcoal to the diamond. Are we not brothers? And the diamond, why so soft? Said the diamond to the charcoal. Are we not close kin? And if I'm paraphrasing really badly, but if I do not challenge you to grow and to be hard, to be stronger, how can we grow together? How can we be our best selves? How can we grow and adapt and evolve into our best self?
Hmm.
So be hard brothers, right? And
Yeah.
so to me, that really captures a lot of the essence of Nietzsche, and that like particularly nowadays, man, like with a lot of social media and people don't really read books anymore and stuff, and it's very the short attention span um, kind of world that we live in.
Yeah.
I see someone like, a lot of people, especially younger people, right? They think someone like, say, Jordan Peterson, right? Like, wow, what a great mind, what everything. And to me, it's like, dude, this guy is like the fucking Timu Nietzsche, right? He's just like this cheap rip-off version of like Nietzsche said so much of his stuff, so much more profound and so much deeper and so much more in a so much more complex and interwoven way than a lot of what people have, right? And I think so. To again, sorry, long-winded tangent, but to speak to people that are looking for that and looking for that, and I think it is like it's a dude thing, right? Like men want boundaries, men want challenge, men want something that forces them to grow and like that kind of male influence, if you like.
Yeah.
And to me, Nietzsche is the best resource or thing of that, which presents that philosophy, but not in this cheap, tacky, strong, 80s action figure movie star kind of
Yeah.
way, right? Like I'm a man and I do this. It's a very thought out, deep way. But what do these principles really, really mean on a deep level? Another book which I think is amazing for this is a book by a guy called David Data called The Way of the Superior Man,
Hmm.
which sounds very like this kind of the big tough man kind of stuff, but it's actually not. This
Sure.
guy studied quite a lot with a lot of Hindu and Buddhist masters, and that book is like an amazing book about like being a man is not this like a masculine person is not this like tough emotionless kind of rock thing that you're
Yeah.
presented in these one-dimensional things. It's a much more
Stoicism and bravado and all that. Yeah.
yeah, but it appears to the uneducated, if you see like a small slice of it, it appears the same, right?
Yeah.
But the thinking and the philosophy behind that is a much deeper, much more profound set of principles that drive those decisions, right? And so to me, those two books I think are like are fundamental, and this is the real. If you are talking about like you talked about this on that Router interview, like men who are looking for guidance, and I feel like a fucking like fucking some crock here trying to be the guy trying to give us guidance, but we're here, so I'm gonna continue with the train of thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is really important to draw on solid foundational principles or solid philosophical principles to base these things from, and that a lot of the outcomes are the same. The actions appear the same, or what you might do is the same, but the reasons that drive them are fundamentally different, and therefore the outcomes, the soil in which these seeds are growing from, the plant that develops from is grow into fundamentally different things, right? So I think my advice would be to read those books, and also why I joined the police and the army and did all this stuff. And believe me, I'm not like some guy who like believes in the rule of law, and I'm certain like if I was any sort of political persuasion, I would be an anarchist. Um, it's more the idea of like as a young man, like the most important thing is real legitimate challenge, right? Not some soft, safe thing where you can do this, like legitimately putting yourself in a situation which not necessarily is life threatening, but something that really makes you feel like real fear, right? And this is a really good example, and it's something that in that Way of the Superior Man, David Data talks about. It's like the stereotypical guy thing would be like, oh, if you're a tough man, you're not afraid of anything, right? And that's the most like bullshit. Like, if you are really living your life in a masculine way, in this following this philosophy or this idea, you should be scared shitless every day. You should be like pushing yourself to your limit, where you don't know if you can actually achieve what you need to achieve. Where you are really living on your edge, and not so far where you're like, you're going to have a mental breakdown or you're going to be exhausted or whatever. But if you're not feeling fear every day and feeling uncertainty and feeling like, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know if I can do this, like legitimate fear, like you're not living, man. You're not growing, you're not leaning into your edge. And so that's the thing. And so, like obviously like police and the army are real examples of that. It's like, when you're there doing that stuff for real, you can't pull your hand up and say, "Oh man, time out" or something like this. It's real shit, right? And that really develops you and gets you to not just think about this, but makes you comfortable in these situations, gives you that self confidence. But it doesn't need to be that stuff, man. Like business can be the same thing. Certainly going to the gym and pushing yourself can be the same thing. There's many other ways, that you can lean into your edge and feel that fear, really push yourself and not lie to yourself about if you are really, living to your full potential. But that is the idea, right? Is that men go through challenge and women go through love is the the stereotypical answer. And again, I'm kind of hesitant to put these gender boxes and things like that. But there are ways of approaching the world, and generally people that are born with a penis think this way, or generally tend to think in this way, and people that are not generally tend to think in the other way. So I think it is a useful analogy to take. But yeah, my thing would be read those books. Um, Take that particular thing, and Nietzsche and David Data both talk about this very much, about like real danger, really leading into your edge is where your dark side, all that kind of stuff is where real growth and self discovery and becoming your real self. That's where they all grow from. And so take that philosophy, but put into practice in real world things. Don't be some guy who reads a ton of books but never does anything interesting.
Mm.
Like legitimately, and if you were to ask David Data, the way to do this would be is just like, if you don't know what the answer is, sit in a room with nothing, no television, no phone, no paintings on the wall. Obviously, you need a toilet, you need the basic food to eat, but make it as like basic as possible, and the answer will come to you very quickly. And I think that's another way to approach it: is deprive yourself of all these distractions, all these frivolities that make your life easy and safe and distract you from that real question. Put yourself in a very, very kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Not minimalist, but not stoic. You know what I'm trying to say anyway. Put yourself in that
Yeah.
situation, and the answer will come to you quite quickly. Yeah.
Fantastic. uh yeah, I want to go read now. Um and it is funny. There is an awful lot. Maybe it is a generational thing. I've noticed, I don't know, at least the last 5 or so years, uh you have a whole slew of the alpha male, how to be a man. Like if you pay me $100 to buy my ebook, or
Hmm.
personalized videos, or come do my man camp or whatever. And it I'm sure some people are really put off by all this, and that's fine. I'm sure it's not for everybody, but it does seem like there is a very large demographic these days of men, usually younger men, who maybe their fathers didn't take the time to instill this stuff in them, and they're looking for that. They're looking for that guidance, like you said. And I think there's a lot of predators out there that are trying to capitalize on that, or maybe they really believe what they're selling and they're just wrong.
Yeah.
um,
I mean,
but
I think it's the same for women too, man. Like, don't just believe that there's the same thing exists for girls, right? There's all this like toxic messaging out there about
yeah,
what you should or you have to do, and if you don't do this, you are this or that other kind of thing. It's the same pressure, right? And I think, yeah, I mean, maybe it's like the loss of the traditional family structure or whatever is part of it. Certainly, I think like our hyper um, short attention span, overstimulation of information has a bit to play with it too. And I think that's, speaking about men specifically, I think that's the big problem, right? Is like these guys that you were talking about, what they are trying to do is to prod your insecurities, right? And make you feel that you are lacking something.
mm,
And, I think a lot of guys feel like they are lacking something, which is what feeds into that. But I mean, I think if you were to take speaking about like this idea of like masculinity that we are talking about before, one of the most fundamental principles, right, is like no one knows the best answer for me other than myself, right? Maybe, if I'm married or in a serious relationship, my partner or my children or whatever, they are part of the conversation, right? They are viewpoints that I take into various consideration, and there's something that I listen to, but ultimately as a man, I need to be able to be strong enough to be able to make my own decision and not feel that other people are able to pressure me or push me in this particular direction, right? Like it's the idea of being the rock, right? Another good one in that David Data book, right? He talks about like and this sounds like super sexist, but like if you read this book, it makes a lot more sense of like it is not like this at all. But he says, what your woman wants is what says she wants is often not what she wants, and he gives this example in this book of like, imagine you are there is a threat to humanity who comes along, and you need to go to war to fight this threat to humanity for freedom of all mankind or something. And so you say to your wife, my dear, I've got to go. I've got to go to war. I've been conscripted or whatever, and I'm going to go fight this evil. Imagine this perfectly exact example of how this might exist. And she says, no, darling, I don't want you to go. Like you might die. What am I going to do without you? And stuff. And you say, oh, you know what? You're right, baby. Yeah. If you feel that way, look, I'm just going to stay here, and the world's at threat. But if you want me to be here, I'm going to be here. Imagine how deflated your wife would feel if you said that, right? So it's an example of not to say that like women don't know what they want or like you shouldn't listen to your wife or anything like that. But I think a part of like what it is to be that play that role in that relationship or to form that particular energy is knowing who you are and being able to like make a decision, even if it is unpopular, even if it is uncomfortable, even if it's maybe not what you want to do, but knowing that this is the right thing to do and being able to take that step, right? And I think a lot of these guys who prey on guys' feelings are preying on that, and that these guys are getting manipulated into feeling insecure or like they're lacking something or someone is pushing their buttons and they don't know how to say no. And to me, that's the biggest thing of like, to me, the most masculine action in this context that we've been talking about is like just switch off, turn off notifications at a minimum. If not, don't necessarily need to delete your Facebook, your Instagram or something, but like, man, put your attention in reading books and your friends, your family, your people that are close to you, right? Stop listening to this garbage that people are trying to pump you and push your buttons and force you into these actions, play with your emotions. And I think a lot of dudes don't know how to do that, right? I think a lot of people in general don't know how to do that. But speaking specifically to this, like, man culture thing that people are trying to sell,
Yeah.
the whole thing is ridiculous in that like if you that it's based on this premise of like I feel insecure, so what I do is rather than going out and finding the answers for myself, I want someone else to tell me what to do to
Yeah.
not be insecure, right? Such a ridiculous idea. But I think like that's it, man. It's like a lot of people obviously I'm not a Christian or someone that really believes in the Bible or any of the teachings of that kind of stuff. And obviously there's some like common, do unto others as you do unto yourself stuff, which is very generic. But as far as that as a spiritual trees, I don't put a lot of credence in its strength or its depth. But I think most people are idiots, and it served a social function in binding society together, right? And the problem is that we've God is dead, as Nietzsche would have put it. We've removed religion from that bedrock in society, and people haven't replaced it with something else, which is profound and deep and gives structure to their life. And that's a problem, right? It's like without that, of course, you're lost in your wandering in the desert without any sense of identity or where to go, and you fall prey to this kind of stuff. So I think that's a lot of the problem too. Is like just read more books, man. Find something that's profound and deep, and gives your life meaning and challenge, and takes your attention away from all this bullshit and lets you focus deeply on something. That's the real answer, right? But all these things are like contradictory in their nature, and that they're trying to sell you a course where you pay 9,999, you follow these easy steps, and you become a man. It's like this is just like a complete contradiction.
So is just like a kind of a quick summarization, and then we'll probably move on a little bit. But quick summarization for people, or a quick list. Give us like five recommended reading, like five books.
Okay, so yeah, if I was gonna pick those, I would say Nietzsche, Das Take Zarathustra. I would say Twilight of the Idols, and The Antichrist. So those three. Um, David Data, Way the Superior Man, and yeah, like I said, a divisive one, and one that I would recommend that you listen to on audiobook rather than read the, how was it, like 2,000 pages, I think, Atlas Shrugged.
Wow.
But yeah, Atlas Shrugged is a very good book in that, like, it's, to me, it's, I mean, the story of the book is like basically all the productive people in the world are getting leached, and it's a bit more political in nature. But it's a bit more like you've got this very communist kind of government coming in, and all the productive people are getting leached for their worth, right? You know, they're getting
Mhm.
squeezed, and basically the more productive you are, the harder your life is, right? The more people take from you.
Mm.
And so these guys, as in the metaphor Atlas Shrugged, they're carrying the world, and they just decide to say, well, fuck you, we're going to go somewhere else. And so it's an interesting story. Like I said, a long one and a little self indulgent, but
Mhm.
to me, a very good book about kind of individualism, and something that I think if any of what I described rings true, it's probably something you can find somewhat relatable. And it's also cool in that it's a story rather than someone trying to finger wag about political things. It's something you just read as an interesting tale, as rather than necessarily a philosophical treatise, even though it's kind of designed to be that way. You can read The Fountainhead is another one, which is like a shorter version of that, which is similar. But I think Atlas Shrugged is the one I love. But yeah, man, I
Yeah.
recommend audiobook because like reading it print back is like it's an ask. It's an ask. But audiobook is not so demanding.
I can only imagine. I have to read in like spurts when I go through books, so it takes me a while just to go through it. It's something typical. I can only imagine how long it'd
Mm.
take me to finish it.
Yeah, I mean, audiobooks are good, especially if it's like a story, right? Because
Oh,
you
for
don't need
sure.
to pay as a tense attention when it's just like someone's telling a story. So
Yeah,
that's good like that.
absolutely. Well, thank you for that. Uh, that was
You're
that was
welcome.
that was definitely like high on my list of things I wanted to cover.
Cool.
Um, sorry for the people that wanted to hear about guitar strings.
Unfortunately, it seems to be a recurring theme with my interviews. But, yeah, I like talking about it. So
I do too. Hey, we gave ample gear talk there at the beginning, and it was a step above a lot of the interviews that I do, where we just kind of talk about the gear, don't even have any pictures or anything handy. So I think we're doing good.
I'm glad
Yeah,
to hear.
the the rations or whatever, but um so your day job is pretty interesting for somebody in a war metal band.
Hmm.
um, I probably will not describe it accurately, so I'll let you do it. Uh, and for the layman like myself, um, kind of a beginner, you know, total idiot's guide to what it is that you do.
Well, I mean, so I'm a software engineer, and I work on a full stack developer, I guess would be kind of what the official term for what I do is. Um, but I mean, I guess probably you're alluding to that I kind of work in the Bitcoin space, and
Yes.
that's kind of the focus of it. And I guess probably to not get like super off the track, this is probably the part that's the most relevant and interesting to people in a music context. And that, like, this to me was something which fundamentally has been a very powerful and impactful and useful thing that I've done with my life that has very much helped my music career. So, I was someone that got into Bitcoin. Well, to me, it does not feel early, but certainly people nowadays feels early, like 2014. And so, I got into it because I used to be a police officer. And then, I read about the Silk Road trial,
Mm-hmm.
where they were selling drugs online. And it was going on for 3, 4 years before they managed to get the guy, and not just through some silly slip ups that he made, but no, through real faults of the technology itself. And then this is like blew my mind, dude. I'm like, wow, the FBI, the NSA, all these guys, this is right in front of their eyes, and they couldn't do anything about this. And so this instantly captured my attention. So what really I was interested initially in was darknet markets, which are these online websites where you can buy drugs, rather than Bitcoin itself. Bitcoin was the payment method that allowed this to happen. And really, darknet markets were facilitated by three technologies, which was Tor, which is like an anonymous system for browsing the internet, or using the internet, like where to this day, we're pretty into things like Silk Road, etc. We're pretty confident that it is, as long as you use it right and you follow the best practice, is more or less anonymous.
Mhm.
You had PGP, which is an encryption technology, which basically stands for pretty good privacy, and it's a way that open source software that has existed at that point for I think about 20 years at that point, to 1993, I think. PGP was created, and basically it's a way that you can encrypt text or anything like that, but it's free, easy, open to download, and it's not like proprietary software,
Yeah.
and it's also robust. It's something that is used by military and other things, and to this day, seems to be secure. So it's a way to communicate, send details in a way that can't be read or any other sort of way than that. And of course, Bitcoin is a way to do the payments, because if this had been going through PayPal or bank transfer, obviously they would have just found out who the people were or shut down the transfers or whatever. So these three things together enable people to be able to trade drugs online, and so I got into this, and I was like, wow. And at this stage, as I said, Silk Road had been shut down, but like has happened every other time this has happened since. You close one down, it's like a hydra, like five more spring up where it was,
Yeah.
because obviously a very lucrative market. And so yeah, so I got on there and I bought LSD, DMT, counterfeit US dollars, all these kind of things, and the shit like shows up in my mailbox. I remember I got DMT, and I'm like, man, every other drug you've done in your life, right? You have some friend of yours like, hey man, do you want to try this? And yeah, man. So you put the pipe thing and put the lighter here or whatever. And I got DMT. I'm like, man, I don't even know how to fucking smoke this. Like, I look up online and like, am I doing this right? Like, just crazy, man. This thing shows up from who knows where, right? It shows up in your mailbox with this, and like, wow, so this just blew my mind.
Mm.
So anyway, obviously through doing that, the payment method was Bitcoin, and through that I got into learning what Bitcoin was, and at that time it was around $200 and had come down from $1,000, and I'm thinking like, wow, man, maybe this is going to go back to $1,000 someday and 5 times the money. I've never been like an investor of any sort, or because in the police you have this like pension fund where basically you
Mhm.
put in $1 and the government puts in two, and so nothing is going to outcompete that. So the best thing you do is just put what you would put as an investment into this fund, right? So
Yeah.
I never really learned about stocks or commodities or even property or anything like that. So it was the first thing I really got into investing on, and just quite through pure chance, very good timing as far as getting into it. And at the time was did not have a lot of money at all, but I put everything I had into it because to me it just seemed like such an obvious choice. And obviously now at 100,000 whatever dollars it is today, very very good choice. But what was more important than all that was less and less these days. Man, this is a whole another podcast you can talk about this side of things. But
Sure.
in those days, it was a lot more of like a subculture, like metal is, right? And when Bitcoin really started going in price, and wow, I've got this money, I want to get more involved in this world as well because it's so interesting. And I spend all my time reading about it and learning about it. I'm going to go to some conferences. Really blew my mind, man, of like how this is so much like the world of metal, and there's like this very small group of people with very similar interests. It's kind of like, I guess it'd be the same if you went to some like tricky convention or something, maybe. I don't know.
Hmm.
And the other thing apart from metal that I've been involved in that was so much like this. So the beauty of that is that world, if you, it's less these days, but certainly more in those days. If you go to these conferences and you're a cool guy and just someone that people get on with and stuff, very easy to make friends and well-connected friends that have a lot of opportunities. So initially, I went to these conferences thinking at the time I was like, what I did after leaving the police was our education. So I was running this program for the government where if you're on welfare, I taught them how to like write a business plan, how to create a solid kind of thing to be an entrepreneur. And if they did a good enough job, they got a grant for the government to do that. So I went to these conferences thinking, like, is there something for like educators in this space? And the answer was no. But I saw, wow, man, I thought to be a programmer in the space, you have to be some computer genius and
Mhm.
whatever. And what I saw was, now there's actually a lot of demand for people that just are doing the janitor work, if you like, about being a software engineer, right? Someone needs to do the making the coffee of software engineering. And there's a big demand for that. And also in a space like this, which has like it's like imagine trying to think of a metaphor. Imagine there was like a million new metal bands out, and you need guitar players, right? But
Mhm.
you don't want to have some guys like, oh yeah, yeah, I can play war metal. I like Slipknot. It's like you want someone who really understands what this is about, right? And
Yeah.
has the real understanding and knowledge of the space. And so because of that, like I came back from those conferences and just started. I just like signed up to a boot camp online and started learning to program on my own. And because I knew people internationally in New Zealand, and 8 months after I knew nothing about coding or software development or anything,
Mhm.
I was talking to a friend of mine in New Zealand who had a Bitcoin exchange, and he was saying, "Oh, what have you been up to?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, I've been working more on this programming stuff I told you about and stuff." And he's like, "Oh, we need someone to help us write this API. Do you want to come work for us like one day a week?" And at the time, I was working 4 days of the week, so it's like, "Sure." So yeah, I started working with this guy one day a week, and then long story short, yeah, I broke up with an ex-girlfriend, decided I want to leave New Zealand, and decided, okay, I'm just going to do it. Said to him like, hey, I'm leaving for these personal reasons. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I would love to keep working for you remote, and if that's not going to happen, I completely understand.
Mhm.
But if you want to, I would love to keep going. I said, sure. So yeah, I left the country so I could get out of there, and then I'm working remote. And then that developed into a full time kind of thing, and then started shifted from a New Zealand company to an American company where the wages are much better and the time zone is a lot better. So basically, through getting in this world and deciding to study software, I managed to get myself in a position where now, I live on the other side of the world. I get much better money. It's much better for touring. Unfortunately, other guys, got regular conventional jobs. But imagine if like all four of us were like this, like you could just do like, oh, we're going to go play a festival this week, and then there's another one, but it's like 3 weeks away. Oh, let's just hang out, get an Airbnb and somewhere cheap and just
Yeah.
work, during the week. And then when that comes up 3 weeks later, fly there. But for most people, if you're taking vacation time, right, you've got to be at home in the country that you're in when you're working, but you
Yeah.
can't work somewhere else, right? So that gets logistically really complicated. But for me, it makes things super easy in that, like, it's I don't really have to worry about time off. Well, it's kind of one of these industries where you can have unlimited time off, but really you got like not very much time off at all. But
Mhm.
I don't have the it's not vacation days aren't the same sort of pressure that they are for other people. But also living in a country like New Zealand, I can travel around a lot. I can go to other concerts. I can network with other people because I have this like geographical liberty that other people don't have, right?
Mhm.
So to me, that's kind of, I guess, from a music perspective, the most interesting way to view it is that, like, to me, it's been a real liberator about my personal freedom and my geographical freedom, and that it has allowed me to do a lot more with music and do a lot of things with Diocletian that maybe wouldn't have been possible otherwise if you didn't have someone who was able to travel around and do this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's a very cool, unique position. Fascinating to me. A lot of the Bitcoin stuff is like stocks is all of it kind of little just above my head. Um, Definitely something I want to look more into in the coming years, though.
Mm. I mean, look, obviously you're talking to like the a complete religious zealot when it comes to this kind of stuff. And it is a cult, man. It is a fucking cult, this space. So I'm not going to deny it at all. So I don't want to be one of these guys just like trying to buy Bitcoin, bro. Like, all sure your friends that are into this are like most people in this fucking space are. But yeah, I mean, it's but I'll make it very short and brief. Yeah, I mean, I think if you really look into this technology and you understand what it is, it's an amazing technology for liberty and human freedom. And a lot of the principles that I think if you're into the space and generally what people identify with that are into extreme metal, it makes a lot of sense about the connection between what Bitcoin offers and to humanity and these principles. And also, I think it really seems to me to be inevitable. Sometimes it definitely doesn't feel like it. And the moment is one of these kind of times, but it is. I think to me, it's just if you when you really grok this stuff, this is the money of the future. This is the only finite thing that exists in the world.
Mm.
There's provably finite, and so for that reason, there's this meme in the Bitcoin space. It's everything divided by 21 million, which is the total number of Bitcoins that can ever exist. So everything is divided by that. That is the ultimate denominator, if you like. So in that sense, I think it's as an investment. I think it's much more than an investment. And if you really understand what Bitcoin represents, it's more than just stocks, bonds, a way to get rich.
Right.
People, the meme is like, "Come to get rich, stay for the revolution," is what a lot of people say in this space, and I think that is a true idiom. But but yeah, I mean, purely from a financial perspective, I think it's a very wise thing to look into in terms of everything else. People call Bitcoin a Ponzi scheme, and I mean, you could certainly make that argument. But I mean, if you really once you really start to understand how fiat money and things like, say, property is a great example, man. It's all built on credit. It's all built on, like, yeah, especially in my country, empty houses that are there solely as a way to park your money rather than people actually wanting to live there. So these things are all overvaluated. They are a Ponzi scheme.
Well,
They are propped up
property is
because
very much like that here in the States too.
I think worldwide, right? And it's only worse and
Yeah.
worse because the more economic problems that we have, the more the dollar is devalued. And so people invest in assets that are more finite than dollars, where you can't just print more money.
Hmm.
And so it's not necessarily that property is getting more expensive, it's that dollars are losing their purchasing power.
Yeah.
Um, and so if you understand that and you think of all those things, I think Bitcoin makes a lot of sense if you look into all the details and the stuff about it. But again, another podcast. This could be something you could talk about for hours and hours. And I'm always very conscious of, like, I don't be that Bitcoin guy. It's like, man, can this guy shut up about this Bitcoin shit and get back to the music? So speech over. But that's the TLDR.
Sure. Well, thank you. Um,
You're welcome.
we we've been on here a good minute. I had a couple other questions if you got just a little bit more time.
Got plenty of time, man. Yeah.
Perfect. Um, what goals do you have for yourself, both on a personal level and within the context of Diocletian?
No, I mean, personally, without getting too personal or philosophical, whatever. I don't know, man. I feel pretty good. Like now, am living exactly where I want to live, more or less. Um, living, life can always be better or more this or that. But I mean, a lot of things which I thought when I was 20 years old that I was hoping one day I was going to get out of music, like being able to travel around the world, to be able to live in a different place other than where I was, to be not like super rich, but like, not something where money is not something which I is top of mind problem in my life. Um, and to have the freedom to decide my hours and how I spend my time and my lifestyle. Yeah, I've been lucky to achieve a lot of that through some of the stuff that we talked about. Um, so yeah, not a ton of, to me, like, it's one of these things where when you feel like you're somewhere near there, and like you said, I'm not going to try and say I'm some multimillionaire king of the world guy. I'm doing all right? But the biggest thing is to give back to other people, right? And especially here in a place like Mexico or in Paraguay, where um, one, they're not quite as wealthy as Western countries, but also it's
Mhm.
quite hard to get out of the Espanol sphere, where English is not your first language, and these guys, obviously things like visas, are a lot more of an issue they are for people like you and I. So to be able to help out some of those guys and connect them and give back in some way is something which I want to try and work towards more. Big task, but something which I want to try and help out with as much as I can. When it comes to Diocletian, yeah, I mean, obviously nowadays, man, you're not going to live off this music, right?
Yeah.
It's getting more and more and harder and harder and harder. And so to think about it as like a money maker, as a career, I think is just something where you're going to get forced more and more into making suboptimal decisions for your
Mhm.
music, right? So to me, it's more something where I feel very privileged to be part of this thing, which I think has some relevance in the world of metal and that people respect and people still, to some degree, look to as like something that's inspirational or something that people think, these guys are cool and they pay attention to them. And so to me, it's more like trying to live up to that, not just in terms of the music, but I mean, coming back to, say, for example, this metal threat thing and all the drama that has gone
Oh
down the
yeah.
last month or two about that, right? I think there's some. I really hate the culture war shit, and really all this stuff, as we talked about before. I think it's just a massive distraction. But I think it is important to have these bands that just say fuck you and don't get caught up in this stuff and toe the line, right? About not no towing to this stuff. Where basically, to me, metal was never supposed to be nice and socially acceptable, all this kind of stuff. And it's not really even about what the message means. I mean, a great example is something like Cannibal Corpse, right? It's not like these guys really are raping women and eating
Right.
people alive or something like that. It's supposed to be offensive. It's supposed to be provocative. And I think
Mhm.
people have kind of lost a little touch with what that means, or they're trying to rediscover what that means in this day and age, right? And so I think Diocletian is a band that still, does that a bit, and people, has a little bit of aura or something about it, and to be able to do that the right way, I think is an important place to be in, and so that's something I want to try and live up to and give to. And as I mentioned, like about the music before, just to do stuff that's interesting musically and kind of pushes the boundaries or keeps this very limited and narrow subgenre alive and interesting and pushed in a different direction that hopefully other bands can draw from and add something else to this palette, right? To try and expand
Yeah.
this out. So yeah, to me it's like a passion project, obviously. Like it's not going to be a career. I'm going to pay the
Sure.
bills. It's something that you do in your spare time. And many times in my life, I thought, why the fuck are you doing this stupid music thing, man? It's like such a waste of money and time and energy and getting fucked around and no sleep or whatever. But when you get out there and you do stuff like Metal Threat was one of these, the last European tour was one of these. You remember, like, yes, this is absolutely insane and makes no logical sense. But the whole point of life and doing, why you make money is to do this stuff, right? Is to
Yeah.
do things which are not logical, which are pure expressions of emotion and yourself and your character, whatever. And people love that, right? People want is what art is, right? It's not shouldn't be wallpaper shit in the background, shouldn't be lo-fi beats for studying that you listen to on YouTube while you're doing something else, right? It should be something
Yeah.
which actively adds something to your life, right? Paints, add some color to your life. And so creating music that does that, not just on a musical level, but on the many levels about what music means, I think it's like something that's very important, something that I want to try and do as best as I can.
That that also resonates with me on a lot of levels. How, especially there at the end, when how so many people, music is just like this background, you know. A lot of people just completely miss out on the passion of it, and they don't actually get anything from it. It's so superficial.
I mean, the world is becoming a lot more shallow and superficial, right? And people are just overstimulated
Sure.
generally by the way the technology and our culture towards technology has gone. And that's it. It's like we don't have technology is moving so fast and influencing people in such a profound way, but we don't really have any sort of depth or really any culture around technology and its use, right? Like think about, like, say, your mobile phone. How much of your daily communication with everyone happens through that device? I would guess like 90%, if not more.
Sure.
And those apps that you use, like whether it's WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, Signal, Telegram, Instagram, these things, right? Their algorithms and what they permit and they do not permit, what they highlight and what they try and hide, influences the tone and the color and the nature of your communication with other people, right? So these things are fundamentally changing the way that we interact and are more or less enslaving us to the whims of these apps that we must conduct our lives through. They
Hmm.
are the medium and the conduit that allow you and I to be able to communicate, interact, and communication and cooperation, interaction is like a fundamentally human thing, right? So there's very little discussion. It's something that I think about because I'm in this world, and Bitcoin to me is one of these kind of technologies. Very few people think about. I don't come back to the Bitcoin thing, but it's the best analogy to use in this particular example, and maybe might shed some
Sure.
light on why I like it. It's like the way that your money works, and the way, and I'm sure you've probably had problems with PayPal or Venmo or your bank or something like that before, but what
Mhm.
they permit you to do and not to do, right?
Yeah.
And you can't go and say to your bank, I wish I had my bank account could do this, or I'm just going to write some code and do it and do it and push it out, and if I can write the code, I can do it, right? Because they don't allow you to do this. They're proprietary technologies that only the bank or the people that, the financial regulators or whatever, say what is permitted, right? And so
Mhm.
they control the tone and the nature and the content of conversation. And something like Bitcoin, because it's owned by no one and anyone can go ahead and vary it or change it or update it or whatever. And and with limitations and variations, of course. But I mean, no one is stopping you from changing it or altering it or turning it into something which serves your purpose, right?
Hmm.
And that to me is a technology which is far more human and allows us to communicate and frees us from the shackles of these oppressors and these overlords, if you like.
Hmm.
And that to me is the root of so many problems in our society today is that we are beholden by these technological masters and people don't have the imagination, partly because they've kind of forgotten what it is to even imagine
Yeah.
about that there could be a better thing, and it's totally within the reach of you and I to be able to create these things. But people would rather choose convenience rather than individuality, personality, doing their own thing, and doing the work that is required to express themselves to create a better world. People are just addicted to convenience, particularly in the United States. I think it's like one of the worst countries for this. And that's the problem, man. Is like people are so hooked on convenience and life is so good today compared to how it was for most of humanity's existence.
Hmm.
People are like walking into this slave pen, as as in one of the songs in the last album was talking about. It's like people are letting themselves be led like slaves because they don't have the imagination or the goal or the interest
Mm.
in creating their own world. And technology that we have today, particularly things like AI, has like this crazy potential to turn us like really into the Matrix. It's the best example that I think I've ever seen of this. Like we're just living in the slave world controlled by these other things because we've forgotten we have the agency to be able to create other stuff, but people just want to follow the easy path to take what's convenient, what's tickles their reptile brain, and yeah, it's a root of what's a lot of what's wrong with the world today comes down to that, just the technology itself.
Sure. And I honestly, I genuinely think for a lot of people, it's not even a conscious choice or decision. I think it's just so ingrained into the cultural zeitgeist, which again is perpetuated through things like social
So,
media and TV, what movies,
are you
whatever.
familiar with Plato's Cave?
I don't think so.
All right, go Google that after this
Okay.
interview. It's exactly what this is. It's Plato's Cave. It's
Okay.
and it shows it's not a new phenomenon either.
No.
We are living in Plato's Cave.
Okay. That's definitely the first thing I'm doing when we hop off here. Um, but yeah, no, I think it really is the materialism, the whole keeping up with the Jones kind of mentality is the subconscious thing that is just perpetuated. And for
Hmm.
people, it's just kind of going with the flow or fitting into the norm, which they don't even realize has been shifting towards this way. Um,
Yeah.
which
Yeah, just people are so brainwashed, man, because it makes so much. It's such a like the Matrix or like Brave New World. It's such an enticing
yeah,
reality. It's almost a logical choice to make, right? But it's short term thinking rather than really thinking where does this lead. It's like eating McDonald's, right? It's like if you, especially if you're drunk or something. It's like, oh man, that burger smells so good, but the next day you're going to regret it, right? It's
oh yeah,
that on a much larger societal scale.
which historically speaking, as technology in general has evolved throughout all of mankind, I mean, you've had those moments of such where it feels like the new way is leading you down this, you know, the path of least resistance, and it comes with its sacrifices. But uh, since the '90s, we have had such a rapid evolution of technology, unprecedented, proportionally speaking, to the rest of recorded human history,
Hmm.
that it just is like, are we finally at the tipping point where like it's true that we really, um, because I'm sure for people that don't even know what I'm saying, you go back a couple, 1,000 years or something like that. I'm sure there was a farmer that probably turned his nose up whenever, they saw some kind of new farming equipment come around. Like, oh, there's nothing wrong with what I was using. Like these kids are soft.
The Luddites, yep.
Uh, Something that a lot of people these days would just refer to as like, it's just the old generation or boomer mentality. And yeah, sure, like that exists, but are we finally at that point to where we have become so dependent that it is actually becoming a detriment in a lot of ways, both societally as well as like personally and individually.
Hmm. I mean, to me, it's like I said, is I understand this stuff better. Not to say I'm an expert by any means, but like I understand this better than most people because I work in tech and
Sure.
work with programming and stuff like this. But to me, it's like it's as simple as there needs to be some basic philosophical principles about you would have these about food, for example, right? Processed foods are generally bad for you and are toxic, carcinogenic, or whatever. Try and eat a good balance of like non-processed foods, high in protein. Don't overeat. Yeah, they're very basic principles, right? About like we all like food. And if imagine food had just been invented, crazy idea, but just imagine food had been, or we've been eating tasteless chemicals or something, and all of a sudden food as we know it comes along, right? You could see how people would just binge eat, right? Or they would just eat
Yeah.
potato chips or McDonald's or the most like MSG laden stuff, right? But we have principles about like what is the right way to approach food, right? What is a
Mhm.
healthy relationship with food and nutrition? And we just don't have that with technology. It's not even a conversation. It's something that people are not even thinking about or even aware that there should be a conversation. And this is it,
Yeah.
right? And so to me, like as a software developer, one of the most fundamental things is it should be open source, right? It should be code where anyone can see the source code, can inspect it, can read it for themselves, and hopefully can contribute it or change it, fork it, make it their own if they want to. It's not something that is controlled in a black box where you can't see what's going on, like so many of these sites and things are. And if it's open source, right, then it's not owned by anyone, and you're able to at least have some agency, even if not a programmer, about being able to know what's going on. But if it's black box, right? Some guys controlling you, right? You got no insight about what's going on. And so that, to me, that's one of the most fundamental principles is like the core technologies that you use day to day should be open source technologies.
Mhm.
But as I said, most people don't even what is open source. Like, what does this even mean, right? They don't even know, right? This is the conversations that we need as a society. We need to be having an understanding. But it's so immature about our relationship with technology because, as you said, we've had things like gunpowder, the printing press, or agriculture, whatever that come along that have
Sure.
changed human society. But they've been small, incremental changes over hundreds and hundreds of
Yes.
years. But things are happening so rapidly and so quickly now that you haven't even got time, bigger pun, to keep up and to be able to keep pace with it, right? And it's something where people should really be thinking and talking about it. But I think like that whole concept of philosophy and deep thought in and of itself, right, has been just lost, ironically, as a
Yeah.
consequence of this technology itself, right? People have just been turned to these mindless brainlets that are just following stimulation like hamsters on a hamster wheel, and that's the problem.
Like to as a testament to how fast technology is progressing in the current, in these last few years, even in the last 10 years, even. Uh, a lot of it is progressing faster than we are able to legislate any kind of laws around it.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
at first, kind of dawned on me. I want to say maybe during like the Obama administration, drones kind of became like the big hot button conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think there were a drone was used to spot like some criminals hiding out in somebody's barn, and it was able to see through the barn and everything. So it started raising questions about invasion of privacy and things like that. Uh, which that's just the tip of that iceberg. Um, but
Yeah, I mean
but
AI is another Pandora's box like that as well, right?
yeah, that's where I was
You already
going.
you
Yeah,
already see like I don't know if you're on Twitter, but you see this like meme, Grok is this true, or like the Gork is this true is like the one I really like. But people are already deferring to this thing as like some kind of oracle or god, right?
yeah,
And without even because they're too lazy, right? And it
yeah,
makes sense, right? It's like why would I research when I have this thing which generally will tell you a better answer than you're going to be able to come up with
sure,
certainly in like half an hour reading or something if you don't know the subject matter. But you just see, but it's a very slippery slope, right? Of like then you get into this world, and this is already known to be happening. As people, I mean, it's impossible to have these things without bias, right?
yeah,
Because certainly when you work, I work with AI every day as a programmer, and you see like it comes down to the phrasing the question, right? It's like shit in, shit out. If you ask a bad question, you're going to get a bad output. And
yeah,
so if you don't know how to ask the right question, it's going to either it's going to say, sorry, I can't really answer this unless you tell me this, which is not a good UX, not a good customer experience. So what it does is it assumes, and to assume it must have a bias, right? It must have a conscious decision on one way or another to decide what to lead you. And of course, that means that whoever writes these programmers are the people who are more or less controlling or leading society, right?
Hmm.
So it's a very dangerous kind of slippery slope about where all that goes. But it's just something that, like I said, no one thinks about. But when it comes to like the legislation stuff, I'll give you another book for Rigel's reading list, which I think is a book that everyone should read in the light of this kind of stuff. It's called The Sovereign Individual by Lord Rees-Mogg and James Dale Davidson, I think is the other author. So man, it's an interesting book in that this was written in 1997,
Hmm.
and it's quite pretty fucking accurate about it's when you talk about technology, and if you look at say old sci-fi movies, right, it's very easy to guess wrong, right, about where the future's going when you're talking about technology. But pretty on the money, man. Like obviously some things didn't quite play out the same way, but very on the money. And basically, this book, the premise of this book is that human society, the direction of human society has been driven by technology primarily, right? Like technology is what has been the driver that has allowed human society to shape and evolve in different directions. And so they talk about like in the beginning, when we were hunter gatherers, there was not much of an industry or a need for violence, right? In
Yeah.
those days, if you were generally you're traveling in a band of 50 or less people, and you'd be
Hmm.
roving around and you'd be finding the food that you needed for that day or maybe for a couple of days later. So if you come across another tribe, um, there's not really much to be won by fighting them because if you come across this other tribe and you try and kill them for their food or their resources, right? Probably some of you are going to die. Best case scenario, you get food or resources for 2 or 3 days. It doesn't really make sense to be good at killing people, right? Obviously, you want to be able to protect yourself from other people and from wild animals and such. But there wasn't the societal urge or pressure to be specialized in violence because there just wasn't a reward, right?
Hmm.
But then we discovered agriculture, and that made a lot of sense. Of rather than roving around, let's figure out how to use the same land to grow more food than we need, and then when we have a surplus, we can store it. And so, in times of need, we have a granary with food that we can draw on to feed ourselves, which allows society to grow bigger and move in bigger groups, right? But of course, when you've got that big granary, why would you necessarily learn how to be a good farmer where you could just be really good at killing people and wait for this guy to fill up the granary and then go kill him and take his grain, right?
Yeah.
So agriculture is what really brought about the industry of violence, if you like, because once you had that technology, it made a lot more sense to be good at killing people because you could accumulate a lot more resources by killing other people.
Hmm.
So that's really what led to the development of the feudal system, where in the feudal world you had like lords and their knights, and knights were basically like really like motorcycle gangs, like these guys raving, despite the way movies or things would depict them, these bands of thugs traveling around the countryside demanding tribute and ransom on the behalf of the king, but also for themselves. And if you wanted to stick up to these guys, right, that to be a knight, you had to be born to the right family to be able to get the armor, to be able to get the horse, to be able to train enough of your life rather than just doing the work of getting your food in the fields or
Hmm.
whatever. So the townspeople or villages surrounding the king couldn't really resist this because to be specialized in violence, you had to have that level of access to resources, right?
Yeah.
So there was another technology according to this book that really changed this. So two technologies that fundamentally changed this. And so one of them was gunpowder, right? And gunpowder, when it became a thing, meant that the town as it could organize the political unit because with even early firearms, you could get the biggest village idiot in an afternoon, teach him how to use this thing that could kill a ton of knights in a second, right? So that's what led to towns basically saying, when gunpowder started coming along, and the knights would come to the town and say, okay, pay up, the king wants this tribute. I said, no, sorry, man. We got our guns here, and if you want to try it on, you can try it on, but we're going to wipe you out, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what led to more or less what led to democracy as we know it today, is because towns started to form as political units because they could resist the feudal king, and so they organized into this alternative political system, and this is kind of the world we have today. Another one technology that really drove that change at that time was the printing press, where before then, obviously, the church was in everything, right? Like
Hmm.
everything came down. It was like the ultimate question was, what does God think about this? Should I wear a red shirt today or a blue shirt? What does the Bible say about this? But most people couldn't read and did not actually have access to the Bible itself, right? How they learn about Bibles, they went to church, and there's this one copy in 400 kilometers or whatever, where this guy got up and told you what the Bible said, but they couldn't read or they couldn't take it home and study it themselves. It's like this is a closed resource, right? And so the church had this massive power, but they also had this monopoly on being able to say that. And when the printing press came along, the first thing that was printed was the Gutenberg Bible. And what immediately followed was a bunch of people actually having the chance for the first time to read the Bible and say, well, hold on, when Jesus said this, he didn't mean what the guy in church did. I think he meant this. And that's what led to all these, like Protestantism, baptism, all these other schools of thing. Well, fundamentally, what this meant is this devalue the power of the church to be the arbiter of information about the ultimate resource and the ultimate kind of fabric of society. So in this book, The Sovereign Individual basically talks about that we're going through a similar thing now in the world, and that there are two technologies that mirror very closely the two that I talked about. First one is the internet, which more or less mirrors the printing press, and that now anyone has the ability to distribute and read information where previously, it was only newspapers or book publishers, or in the context of music, if you were assigned to the right label, that you could get people to hear about your music, right? But the internet has made it completely free and open for anyone. Anyone can share and encounter whatever information they need, right? So that removes the gatekeepers of governments and corporations, this thing as being the arbiters of information. The second one is encryption. And encryption is analogous to gunpowder in that pretty much before encryption, or before we had publicly available robust encryption where anyone could use it, things like PGP that I talked about before, if you had anything of value and you had the most guns, tanks, bombs, or whatever, you could come and you could take that thing. If you had some secret, and especially wealth, doesn't matter how much wealth you had. If I had more men with guns than you, I can come and take that thing from you. But information is one thing, but when you get to things like Bitcoin, or when money becomes information itself, like it's not like a bank account thing which is backed by dollars, when the money is information, that fundamentally changes the laws and the reward or return on violence, because no amount of violence can solve a math problem, right? You can't unhash a hash by beating it or bombing it or whatever. It's like
Yeah.
violence does not allow you to unlock that box and take the gold like it used to, right?
Hmm.
So what that means in this book is he talks about like basically what is happening, just like the church was like the center of all things in the 17th, 16th, 15th, whatever century, and now it's just an amusing afterthought that people believe in, but it has no real political power. According to this book, and I think the thesis to me makes sense and rings true, and it's that's how governments are today, right? It's like governments own their citizens, especially Americans, where you guys are tax slaves to the United States. You can't just leave the US and not pay taxes to the US. You've got to pay taxes to the US forever as a US citizen, unless you're announced citizenship, right? So basically, you're cattle to them, right? They can milk you forever for a percentage of your worldwide income, right? But if you have these technologies that allow you to and especially for people that are not with a situation like, say, in New Zealand, when it comes to taxes and residencies and things like that, it's a lot more flexible in the US. If you're able to create a thing where you can live outside of your jurisdiction, or you can move between multiple jurisdictions, right? So you're not necessarily tied to one geographical place. If things get tough there, you can move to somewhere else, or you can have your business based here, but you live here and you bank here, and you have a business operating here, right? Gives you this flexibility to be able to play jurisdictions off against themselves.
Hmm.
And so what that means is that the more that money becomes encrypted and things become encrypted, where the power of governments and their militaries may have no real meaning in that context about their ability to control value, and where people are able to work online or encounter information or have this freedom that the internet allows them. This is the idea of the sovereign individual, is that he says, they say in this book, that in 200 years, or who knows, like say 200 years, like with the church and like with gunpowder and the printing press.
Mhm.
It took kind of hundreds of years to it slowly play out. But according to this book, like, in 200 years, we think about now that like you are an American, I am a New Zealander, you're like you are owned by your country, which is a ridiculous concept. And like, particularly, say, to Europe, if you were born on this side of this imaginary line 200 years ago, you would have been Polish, and 100 years later, you're German or something. It's such a ridiculous, arbitrary idea. But the strength of your passport and your tax laws and all these things have such a profound influence on your destiny and
Mhm.
your future. What he says is that in the future it's going to be more like this world where they are businesses competing for your money. So you'll be able to say, for example, Singapore says, "Well, hey man, you can buy a 5-year citizenship permit from us for $100,000. For that, you get a passport, you get civil services, the roads, the police, the driver's license, all the stuff that expect from a nation state, right?" And then Mexico comes on and says, "No, guys, no, no, come here. It's only going to be $50,000 here, and we've got beautiful beaches and great food or whatever." And so it becomes this competition where if citizens are not tied to their nation state, they can become the buy. It becomes a buyer's market, right, where they can select where they want to base themselves and live. And really, it is very much in this kind of world. But it's a really interesting book to draw on what you were talking about before, to look about where this might go. And to me, where I see the world going on in this direction.
Fascinating. Yeah, no, I definitely have to check that out. Um, man, this has been fantastic and
A
educational.
long one, a long
Yeah.
one.
Um, I'll
Cool,
yeah, I think we're going on I think we've hit the 2 hour mark, I believe. We're close
wow.
to it. Which is great for me.
Mm-hmm.
We'll go ahead and bring this to a close with the same, little question I always end these with. Give us your top four bands and or albums, whatever's easier to prattle off the top of your head real quick.
Man, that is a very hard question for me to answer. I've got quite diverse taste in music, but I think I asked you if you have some rough outlines of what you might ask. You said four death metal albums, so that's what I
Yeah,
wrote down.
sure.
And so for me, and again, death metal. What is death metal? And I mean, things like Blasphemy or Sarcophago would definitely be in this list, but for me, they're not quite death metal. I know, very contentious
Mm,
topic, but if you were going to say what's purely death metal, for me, the top four would be Morbid Angel, Covenant, I think. Hard to pick me of the first four, but Covenant, I think, is the one which is my favorite. Um, Immolation, Dawn of Possession, definitely very, very influential, very important album for me, that one. Incantation, Alma to Golgotha, again, difficult with Incantation, like a lot of great releases, but I think that's still my favorite,
oh
Alma
yeah.
to Golgotha. And probably the last one would be Deicide Legion, I think, is probably my last of the
Oh,
four.
hell yeah. D-sides. It changes from, over time, but I would
Mm-hmm.
say overall D-side might be my favorite death metal band. Might be.
Yeah,
It
I mean,
changes and it's tough to say, but
yeah, hard
yeah,
decision, but that's my favorite. Is Legion is definitely the most violent, nasty, evil. That's a great release.
that's fair. That's fair. I go back and forth between like the first like self-titled and Once Upon the Cross because it's just so
Mm-hmm.
it just gets stuck in your head. Like those songs get stuck in your head so
Mm-hmm.
much. It's so
Those
brutal.
first three are all amazing, man.
Oh yeah.
I think
Yeah,
so.
for sure. Rigel, man, I can't thank you enough for taking the time. This has been awesome. This is personally one of my favorites. I know it. We covered, like I said, we covered a good bit of gear. Definitely got to go out in the weeds a little bit, which at this point for me is almost more fun, you know.
Excellent.
But and I think a lot of people, a lot of the fans will appreciate it. So yeah, dude.
I hope so. So, man,
Anything?
and likewise, man, it's been a great interview, and I love. Thank you for indulging my ability to rant and rave and go on tangents.
Love it. Freaking love it. Is there anything you want to plug real quick before we hop off?
No, no, just keep your eye out for the new album. I'm guessing we're recorded late next year. I mean, I'll see. But that, and then I think Europe sounds like it's going to be next on the list for us. Yeah, nothing I can announce yet, but it sounds like that's going to be the thing. So yeah, just keep your eyes open, and we'll be back on the road as soon as we can figure out something to go back on the road for.
Killer. Well, yeah. Keep in touch or share it on Instagram, whatnot. I'm anxiously waiting for it, and definitely want to try to help plaster that out as much as possible.
Thanks, man. I'd appreciate it.
Oh, of course. Well, with that said, thank you again for joining us, and thank you guys at home for watching. And we will see you next time. Peace.
Thank you. Cheers.